Hello, Laura. I'm so excited. We have, wow, we go back.
We go back.
We go back to the beginning of both of our sobrieties,
Yep.
which I want to discuss, but also we also have been, I've been on your podcast twice. You've been on we know each other's stories,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
now we're bringing your story to other people. I think I'm going to say, like, right off the bat, something that's unique about your story is that you had to quit Ambien,
Yes.
which a lot of people don't realize is a drug that people get addicted to.
And well, in fact, it's prescribed or it's touted as a drug that isn't addictive.
Is
Like,
it?
yeah, it's one of the ways they prescribe Ambien is by saying that it doesn't have the addictive qualities that other sleeping or sedation medications do. But I am living proof that that is in fact faulty.
Well, also, I mean, I know quite a few people who have gotten addicted to Ambien.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's not as common as other drugs, but I actually where I went to treatment, that place is kind of famous for treating famous Ambien addicts.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Well, I like Tiger Woods. Like that's the first one I can think of. There are more. I can't think of who they are now, but there was like a series of people who went there to address their Ambien addiction.
Now, do you think, and I want to get into your whole story, which is so good, and Laura's book, which I already told you about at the beginning, and you'll hear about at the end, but Stash is your book, My Life in Hiding. And it's such a good book. It's so deep, but I mean, the thing about the Ambien is that I'm curious about is do you think that people start taking it totally innocuously for sleep and then or do you think it's people that are already abusing, like already drink too much? Who are the people that get like, ooh, this is good?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there are a lot of dealers dealing in per se. You know what I mean? Like they might have it for cocaine addicts so they can come down, but
Oh,
Ambien's like not the main thing that they're dealing. It's usually something that people get addicted to because it was prescribed for them. And so people are typically addressing a sleep issue when they get hooked on Ambien. And like for me, I was able to take it kind of normally for about a year. I got prescribed 30 of them, and I it took me a year to get through that bottle. But the next year,
oh, I
it
thought you
was
meant for a year, like you were taking it every night, like you
no,
got 30 a month.
I
Oh,
got no,
you
I got a total of 30 the first year. And and yeah, I didn't get another prescription that year. It was just like every once in a while, as needed, I would take one and it absolutely did the trick.
But did you notice, did you have that period? Because what I understand from the Ambien use is that, or misuse, is that you cannot just fall asleep. I have taken Ambien in my life in the past and fell asleep in 20 minutes. Like there was no high period.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It's like for me, um, I have been, like people look for romantic partners all their lives. I was looking for a drug partner. Like, what's the perfect drug for me? And and I never found it until I took that first Ambien. And you're right, I did fall asleep pretty quickly, but there was a period of time right after I took it where I had this euphoric high, something that I'd never experienced before or since, I will add. It's that thing, I write it in the book, it's that high that heroin addicts chase. It's that euphoric disconnection where everything feels floaty and warm and yummy and squishy. And I would experience that, for probably if I were timing myself about 10 minutes, but that was enough for me. And then I would have the best sleep I'd ever had in my life following that feeling.
Well, I'm shocked that you didn't get addicted to it faster then, if you
Yeah,
felt
me
that
too.
feeling.
Me too. But you know what? I had really little kids when it started. One was a baby, one was a toddler. I think the way that my mind was wired at the time was I had to be up too many times during the night. So it wasn't really possible for me to knock out every night then. It became possible later on when they were a little bit older and they were sleeping through the night. Then I could knock out more often, but I couldn't practically do that first year.
So, well, take me all the way back. Give me
Mm.
a little of the childhood. You and I have some stuff in common from childhood.
Yeah, my childhood is, I guess it's a pretty unique story. I was in Cambridge, Mass. I had two parents who divorced when I was four. Dad moved to another state to go to med school and then open his practice as a doctor. I stayed with mom. She remarried a man who just did not like me. Everything I did rubbed him the wrong way.
Same.
Yeah, and yes, and that's when I learned kind of to edit myself, in order to keep the household peaceful. I dropped out of high school right after ninth grade. I was really just drowning in this 3,000 person school after being in a school with like maybe 100 kids. I don't think so in the whole school. And there were 11 kids in my class. And I was just so unprepared for that transfer. I was very much on my own at my first public school, and I just didn't make it. And didn't go to college. Had my first drink somewhere around 16 or 17, hated it. Would pretend that I was drinking when I was with my friends, but really just dumping it in the bushes. Didn't like it. But what I did end up liking around 19 was freebasing cocaine, which is, I mean, I went all the way from like nothing to the worst.
Right. You're like, no, I'll pass on the beer. Do you
Yeah.
have any crack?
Crack. Oh, and this was even before crack, right? This was before
Right.
it was named crack, and it was very glamorous. There were these big parties, and it was being cooked in the kitchen, and people were like smoking in these gowns, and I thought it was really cool. And I did it on weekends for about a year, and I started missing shit, like start not showing up for stuff on Mondays. The weekends became longer, and my parents confronted me, so I stopped, which I thought was evidence that I was not an addict or an alcoholic because I just stopped in my tracks.
But when you dropped out of high school,
Yeah.
what did your mom and stepfather say about that?
Um,
You drop out in the ninth grade, usually they have some feelings.
yeah. I stopped going in the ninth grade. I actually enrolled in the 10th grade and I was there on campus, but I didn't go to any classes in 10th grade. And that's when it came to light. There was a lot of back and forth about where should I go to another school? Should I start ninth grade over? Like, and I didn't want to do any of the things that they suggested. So they said, well, if you're not going to be in school, you have to get a job. And so I got a job. And
Doing
that's how
what?
I worked at Berkeley Sauna. And my job was to clean out the sauna rooms, which was disgusting. It was like, skid marked towels
Oh,
off the bench and then, like carefully try not to touch anything and then like clean the sauna room for the next person and check them in. I worked at Ortman's Ice Cream. I scooped ice cream there. I was a waitress at Skates on the Bay. Like I did a variety of things.
okay.
Yeah.
And then you just happened, did you meet some people that got you into freebasing?
Oh yeah. Well, I had this group of Black friends that I met during this time period of my life. And I had Black friends before, but not like Black friends. Like they were Black like me. Like they kind of grew up around white people and they kind of fit in everywhere. This was a group of Black women that only grew up around Black people. They grew up in a Black neighborhood. They went to Black church, Black hair salons, Black clubs. And I fell in with them. And a friend of a friend took me to one of those parties. They weren't into it. They weren't into drugs at all, this group of Black women, but I lit up when I was introduced to it. So I would go back by myself without them.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're freebasing Coke
Yeah. Freebase and Coke on the weekends and then going to work.
socially. You're
Yeah.
socially
Socially.
freebasing. Of
Yes.
course. I get it.
And then going to work during the week. And that was what I was doing, up through about 19 and a half. And that's before I turned 20 is when they confronted me. And then I switched gears and I moved to LA to
Hmm.
to direct commercials. That's what I thought I was going to do here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to be a
Okay.
commercial director. And I went to work for one and found out that I was not going to be a commercial director. There weren't any women directing commercials, and except for Penny Marshall, who was an actress on who had just come off a hit TV show. You know who she
Laverne and Shirley, of
is.
course. Yeah. Wait, so old were you when you moved to LA?
21, turning 22.
Okay, because I moved to LA from the East Coast when I was 19.
Ah,
Yeah,
so
to be an actress, comedian. I didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah.
I knew that. I knew that about you.
Yeah, so young too. I mean,
Yeah,
I did graduate high school, but barely.
yeah.
It
That's
was
what most
bad.
people say. Like, yeah, but yeah, it's an odd thing to be 60 years old, which is what I am, and not have graduated high school because most people assume that I got a GED or I went back at some point and got a diploma, and I just never did. Yeah.
I don't know why, but I love that so much. Yeah. Nowadays, it's odd to have not gone to college. People are like,
Yeah.
"What? You didn't go to
Yeah.
college?" Yeah, but and then I ended up being a writer, so I don't know.
Yes, right? Yes, exactly. Well, there's more than one way to get an education. And I think that my education was obviously not a formal one, but I still got an education, you
But
know.
you're like a hustler, which I think is half of it. I think half of it is just being like, you know what? I want to try that thing. Okay, you know what? I'm going to try that thing. All right, who do I need to know? What do I need to do to make this happen?
100%. Yeah. And that's how I spent my 20s. I started looking for like the next thing. I was drinking very socially in my 20s. Like I would party with my friends, but by the time I was 26, turning 27, I owned my own PR firm, and I had that for 4 years, and I it was a very strict schedule. Everything was back east, client wise, so I had to be in my office at 6:30. This was like pre-cell phones. We had fax machines, just starting to get email, but nobody really used it. We had bike messengers. So everything was very analog, and I needed to be in my office hands on to do anything. So drinking excessively would have gotten in the way of that. And that wasn't even calling me at that point. I was really just running my company.
Okay. Then what happened?
Got married, had kids, and pretty sure that I had um, postpartum anxiety, but undiagnosed. Um,
Same.
yeah, no one said this, but I don't think there was that language then either. I don't think people talked about postpartum depression, right? Which when they asked me, are you crying? Do you feel flat? Do you feel listless? Do you want to end your life? Like those, I was like, no, 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 no. So it was ruled out that I didn't have this, but what they were asking me the wrong questions. And, but I didn't know. I didn't know. I was just like, phew, good. I'm not one of those postpartum moms. Like, I don't have to, because, there was a lot of judgment around that then. A lot of judgment around moms who couldn't like make it or hack it.
Was it before Brooke Shields wrote her book,
I think
Down
that-
Comes the Rain? I think it was
Oh my
called.
God. I think that's what, yeah, I don't know if it was before that or not,
Probably
but
was before that.
probably, probably.
She
Yeah.
kind of broke that open. Like this
Yeah.
is what happens.
But,
I had gone to the doctor for I was crying all the time, but I wasn't flat. I was like on fire, you
yeah.
know, hyper vigilant, very worried, and I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I just thought I'd made a huge mistake in having a baby. That's what I thought. I really was like, this was a massive bad decision, and I ruined my life. And I couldn't feel I loved my baby and I wanted to protect her, but I felt such a huge responsibility. Like it was all on me. Like every decision was going to be huge and could be wrong. So when I went to the doctor, he just said, "Yeah, well, you had a baby. It's a big responsibility." And so I suffered for a while until I think my daughter was like a year and a half old before I went to a psychiatrist who said, "Yeah, you have anxiety."
Ah,
And
thank goodness for
and then
that
he gave me
psychiatrist.
Xanax and I fell in love. That was my drug
Oh,
love.
yes. Really similar. Yeah, that book actually came out in 2006, Down Came the Rain. I just looked it up.
Okay.
Which
Oh,
was,
so it's, yeah. So my first baby was 2004.
and mine was 1998.
So we predate.
We
Sorry,
predate.
Brooke, you didn't help
Sorry.
us.
Yeah,
Too late.
been nice. It would have been really nice.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it was too late. But that's a really similar story, Stephanie, yours and mine. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So did you feel that way too? Like, what have I done to my life?
Mine was really specific. It was like I felt fine, except for I was very tired during the day. But as soon as they went to sleep, I was afraid to sleep. And every single like pre-wake up whimper got me up like a fireman. And I was hovering like to see if they needed me, and I couldn't ever fully get back to sleep because I was so afraid of them waking up and needing me and me not being there. And so that's where it's centered. I didn't really experience it that much during the day, except for I was like snapping at people during the day because I was so tired from having been basically, not wide awake all night, but not really ever getting into a deep sleep because of that. And they were back to back. Miles was 98 and then Justin was 99.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was it was just kind of a continuous 2 years of that.
So, um, not to backtrack too far, but when you were freebasing, did you
Yes,
just stop and go, all right,
I did.
that's young stuff.
It wasn't that, no, it was just that my parents confronted me and they were worried. And I was just like, one, I did not want them to worry about me. Like that felt too heavy and like I had done something wrong and I didn't like that. So I was like, well, the way to remedy this is for me not to do this anymore. That way they won't have anything to worry about. And then because I moved also, it just wasn't like I didn't even know where to do that. And then it was crack and it had like that ghetto reputation and it was different. It wasn't cooked in someone's kitchen where I watched it. It was sold in vials on the street. It seemed dirty then. Like it
Right,
wasn't something that I was interested in doing. I've never been a drug dealer, drug user.
right. You
Yeah.
want that bespoke freebase.
That primo, like winery experience for my freebase. I want a sommelier for my freebase.
Exactly. I get that. I feel that.
Yes, yes.
So, okay, so you're not really abusing alcohol or anything then at this point.
Right, right.
You're
Yeah.
a grown-ass woman with kids and a husband, and nothing's wrong,
Well,
really.
except for the anxiety and the not sleeping at night. But yeah,
Okay. So then you get some Ambien,
and I get some
and
Ambien.
then the kids get old enough that you can take it a little bit more.
Hell yeah. Sleeping
Hell
through
yeah.
the night. I loved it, Stephanie. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I couldn't wait to take it. It definitely rivaled my love for my children. It really did. And it was my treat at the end of the day. That's how I thought of it. Because I went 100% for my kids, 100% through my day. I was doing everything, even before I was the PA president, which is the year I write about in Stash. I was the kindergarten, like room mom. I did
Me
the,
too. No,
right?
I was the room mom in preschool, like
Yeah,
2 years in
yeah.
a row.
and but I was the chair of the fair. Like I was always around campus. At campus I was always with my kids. And then I was a hostess, in the evening, not at a restaurant but at my house. We would have dinner parties. We would throw different kinds of parties. We were at premieres.
So your husband, we should say,
Yeah,
was a big deal,
it was a big Hollywood deal.
a
Yeah,
big Hollywood deal, ran stuff. He ran shit in Hollywood. So
yeah.
you had stopped doing your PR firm at this point.
Yes, yeah. As soon as I got pregnant with my first son, I started shutting it down. And by the time he was born, it was completely closed.
Was there any part of you that was like, okay, now I'm married to this man who's sort of like the big, like he's the name in the relationship and people, I mean, he's a powerful guy. I'm sure that you guys had a connection that you didn't, I'm sure he didn't try to make you feel that way at all, but did you feel like, oh, wow, so now my sense of identity is gone because I don't have my job? Or were you just like, no, you know what? This is what I want. I want to be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was it, I think it was a little bit of all of that. I honestly, by the end of my PR company, I was so glad to shutter it. I was, dealing with a lot of hip hop music acts, and they would not show up, and they would need babysitters, and they, do mushrooms before an MTV interview, and I'd have to like handhold them. And I was out late because there were all these parties that I had to either facilitate or run or walk them through and then be at work, like I said, at 6:30 the next morning. And I was really burning the candle at both ends, and I was finding it not very fulfilling for me. So when I got pregnant with Miles, there was no question in my mind that I wasn't going to try to work part-time. I was glad to get rid of it.
Okay.
I don't think that I thought of, and my husband at that time, I mean, he was still a big deal, but he was a director. He wasn't running anything. He was
Okay.
job to job, a lot of it on location. We would go with him when he shot on location. So that seemed like, how could I do anything else that would interfere with us being able to go with him?
Right.
It didn't seem like a sacrifice to me at the time. To do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so as he did start running things, I guess, I mean, when you were starting to have dinner parties, and did that feel like a big responsibility? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I feel like I would have a lot of imposter syndrome just given our upbringing. Not that we
Sorry.
were,
Sorry. Just one second.
okay.
Sorry,
It,
I didn't know you were on.
it's the interview.
I'm the worst.
You are.
Who is it? Hey, Stephanie.
Hi.
I'll let you guys be all you guys.
Bye, hon.
Bye.
Sorry about that.
Helen will edit that out.
No, you won't.
No, he won't. He doesn't work for this one. That's okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so when you were having to like throw dinner parties, I was just
Yes.
saying like our due to I'm including myself, our type of upbringing, did you feel like, oh gosh, like
It
now I
was
got to be
really overwhelming.
fancy and
Yeah.
have perfect dinner parties and please Hollywood people, or were you like, this is fun, I like this?
Yeah, I think the idea of it was really fun to me. Like, I loved the idea of it. I loved meeting these celebrities that I had grown up watching, or had, just recently started watching. But in practice, it was quite difficult for me. And I'm not domestic at all. Like, I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't decorate. I'm really not interested in how a table is set. I don't care. And so these were all things that I was in charge of, kind of by default. And so that the practicality of it, the logistics were challenging for me. And I think the other thing was I really thought that I would grow into it. I thought like, that practice, how practice makes a practice. The more I practiced this, it would become second nature. And then I would be Martha Stewart, and who was at the time, kind of the consummate
Yeah,
host.
of course.
And it just wasn't, it didn't work that way for me. The more I did it, the more weary I became in it. And the less I liked it, and the more I needed Ambien at the end of the day.
Okay, so you start to take the Ambien, you love it.
Love it.
You're like, this is my treat at the end of the day.
Yes.
Then what? Then it starts, it's fun, then it's fun with problems, then it's just problems. But so are we at just fun at this point?
I mean, kind of, it's that Hemingway quote. It was gradually and then suddenly. And that's what it was for me. We're talking about a 6-year period where,
Wow, okay.
yeah. So, year one was the one that I talked where I only had one bottle and it was great. Year two, I was taking one every night. this is approximate. This isn't exactly 365 days, but
Yeah, this
um,
is not a deposition. It's
right.
just I've got no fact checkers.
And somewhere at the end of year two, I started needing like a 1.5 to get to sleep at night. By the middle of year three, I was taking two to sleep and two in the middle of the night to get back to sleep because it
Wow,
was
okay.
really fast. And my tolerance was just, growing at this really alarming rate. And so the thing that I didn't like, which was alcohol, came into play then, because if I boosted it with alcohol, I would get the effect I wanted and it would last longer. But that also wore off. I got a tolerance for that as well. So, and for anyone who's watching or listening who doesn't know, that is a lethal combination. Sedatives and alcohol is something that one takes to end one's life. And I was taking more and more of that every night until that sixth year where I say I was taking up to 10 a day, which is true, but I didn't usually have 10 to take during the day. So it wasn't like I took 10 a day every day. If I had them, I would have. But typically I only had 4 to 5 a day to take. And so I would try to like ration those out. And so I would probably end up taking like four a day. And I say a day, this was all at night after my kids went to sleep for the most part. And at the very end, it was 24 hours a day.
So at the end, could you take one in the middle of the day and just feel high from it and not need to go to sleep?
Yes and no. I couldn't take a whole one in the middle of the day because it would be visible. People would be able to tell that something was wrong with me. But I could not be without anything because I would go into withdrawal, like really debilitating. So I would break off what I called corners, like part of one, probably, maybe an eighth of a tablet. And I would take that like before I went into school to give a speech to the parent association to steady my hands. I would take one afterwards because I'd have so much adrenaline in me that I would need to calm down, a corner. And then I would save the whole ones for after my kids went to sleep when I went to sleep.
So when did you start? At this point, were you feeling? I mean, I just remember from the book. Now, it's been a little while since I read the book, but I remember scenes about like getting your prescription from the doctor
Yes.
and just knowing that you had that full prescription bottle, best feeling in the world. I remember it from, and I wrote about it too, about like if I could get like a whole thing of Vicodin for a tooth pain.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
Christmas morning. It was like,
Yes.
wow, I have
Yes.
a whole bottle of pills. So, or were you already at that nervous too? Like, okay, I've got this many pills, but unless, I mean, take me to the part where you're like doctor shopping and trying to figure out how to get somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I got my prescriptions from different doctors. They were all my doctors, but I would go to them, I would figure out what the right thing to say to each of these doctors would be, like my OBGYN. I don't remember exactly the story I told him, but I would tell him one story. I had a psychiatrist who I was telling another story. I had my general practitioner who I was telling another story.
You didn't feel like you could just say, I'm having trouble sleeping. I need Ambien.
I did, but it had to be a variation of that made sense specifically for them. And it had to be like, well, the question would be like, why do you need another one so soon? That was
Okay.
always the
Okay.
question. So I would need to come up with reasons why I need another one so soon. And, I used the story of our houses being tented and we had to leave and I left my medications there. Um,
Oh, that's a good one.
isn't that good?
That's so specific.
Yeah, it's
It's
really,
the
well,
specificity that really
yeah,
sells
right.
it.
And because it had happened once and it was true. And don't you know, I went back in that tented house and got my meds.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't think they hadn't turned on the gas yet, but it was still tented. And I was just like, I'll be right back as they're running after me going, Miss, no, no. Um, but yeah, I mean, I needed to come up with different reasons why someone like me was needing refills sooner and sooner and sooner. And eventually that wears thin with everybody,
Right.
right? Each doctor, and this was really at a time when the way that it works now, I think, is that it's all in one database. You get a prescription filled and the state of California knows.
Oh yeah,
that,
the thing you don't want to hear, the word you do not want to hear is triplicate.
ah,
When
so
when I found out that Percocet, for which I
yeah.
got from my C-section, and then when I got it from my second C-section, they were like triplicate. I was like, oh shit.
Wait, what does that mean?
It just means that it goes to different
Oh,
copies of it
different.
are like
Yes, at a
filed
different. Yes,
basically.
yes,
It's not just between you and your doctor. It's between you,
exactly.
your doctor, the state, like and
Yeah.
everybody knows.
Everybody knows. And I started using my middle name, which is my I don't like the word maiden name. I have to think of it because that sounds so like Victorian, my maiden name. But the name I was born with, which is part of my name, but I just started using that instead of my full name. And that got me like another month or two under the radar, right? Oh, can you just call it in to this name, please? And but then I went to see like an orthopedic surgeon. Like I started having to, and then people weren't playing ball though, because they immediately wanted to call my GP and get my files.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so
Party
and I was like,
poopers.
forget it. I'm not, don't do that. And eventually I started running out faster and faster. I would boost it with alcohol and Benadryl at that time because those are both extenders for it. I could take less Ambien if I took more of those things.
Okay.
Um, but that ran thin too. And on July 4th, 2008, I got to this place where I wasn't like sobriety. If I was sober, and I don't mean sober as in recovery, I mean like if I didn't have anything in my system, I was a shaky, in pain mess. Um, just I could not be in public. And if I were loaded, I also couldn't be in public. Right. So that's very isolating, those two states. And those are the only two states I knew at that point. And on that date, I took everything I had, I washed it down with the booze that I had, and I was still, I couldn't get loaded and I didn't have any more. And so I was that shaky, that excruciating mess. And I made the decision to go to treatment.
So you were not separated at this point though, right? Or were you?
I filed for divorce, but we were still living together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he sent you to rehab.
No, no, he didn't know. I told him after I made the decision to go that I was going.
Well, I mean, he supported you.
He did. He
He
actually flew
flew
me
you to
there.
rehab.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he flew me there. Um, in Wickenburg, Arizona.
That
Um,
probably wasn't the most common thing to get flown into rehab. Did you feel othered because you'd flown in? Like, did anybody make fun of you? They probably didn't know.
they knew because I told them, and I just felt better than everybody else there. I didn't. Nobody made fun of me. I mean, they probably did behind my back, but not to my face. I felt like I was better than everyone there who like flew commercial or drove.
So when you went to rehab, were you thinking, I just need to get all this out of my system and get myself like I just know we all go into rehab with different thought process. Not we all. I didn't go to rehab, but a lot of people that go to rehab that can go to rehab either feel, "Oh my God, I'm so done. Thank God I'm totally surrendered," or I just need a reset. Like I need to get all this out, detox so that I could take Ambien like a lady.
Yeah, I really was thinking I just needed that break, like you're saying. I did not think I had no intention of staying sober, none at all. But I did have the idea that I probably needed to try to stay sober until my divorce was final.
Okay.
I knew that I wouldn't be able to without that break and the assistance that would be offered there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so you finish rehab. There's
Uh-huh.
so much to your story, but
Yeah.
you finish rehab. You meet a guy in rehab, by the way,
Hmm.
who just
The guy who just
who
interrupted
just
us.
I'm doing the math. Do you want to know something? And this won't really matter to the people that are listening to this, but today is my 16th birthday.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, happy
So
soberversary
you must be 17.
in August.
Okay.
Hmm.
So, but you stopped in July, or that's when you
Yeah.
made the decision. But
I
then,
just I went to rehab in July. I count my sobriety date is August 14th. That was the last day of rehab because they detox me in there. And I don't know what day. I think it was like 10 or 11 days in. So I don't know exactly what day in there I was free of drugs and alcohol. So I just counted as the day I left because I know for sure that I was sober.
you were trying to sneak stuff into rehab, though.
I wasn't trying to sneak stuff into rehab. I was planning to pick up stuff after I left. I had called in a refill to pick up on my way out to the airport.
Okay. And then now it's coming back to me, but then you didn't.
I did not pick it up because Scott, the man who interrupted us a few minutes ago, left with me. He and I checked in an hour apart from each other. We left on the same day at the same time in the same car. And I had made all these arrangements, like, very covertly for this rehab, because the way you're allowed to do it is like on your last week, in your last week in rehab, you can use the phone, which is a big deal, to make arrangements. You can call like a therapist and set up you can call people that you want to meet at meetings. You can make your plane reservations. I ordered a car to pick me up, to take me to the airport. And during those calls, while a tech is walking around, kind of making sure we're on the up and up and not calling our dealers, I called the pharmacy where a refill had miraculously come through in Los Angeles and said, "Can you transfer it to the one here in Wickenburg? Because this is where I am now." So they did. And then I called the Wickenburg pharmacy to make sure it was ready, and it was.
So
So,
after all this time,
yeah,
and you're detoxed, your
yeah,
brain, and this is so important for especially for the people that are listening that are not addicts to
yeah,
understand is with all that and all the money spent on getting better, your brain goes, you know, it would be great. You know, it would be such a great after rehab treat,
yeah.
Ambien.
Well, and I can't go home without it. I don't know how to be without it. Like even getting on the plane without Ambien was terrifying to me. So I was like, I'm going to need something in order to go home, where I am now at the end of a divorce with kids that I've been away from for 3 weeks, for 30 days, going back to the school as the parent association president and starting that year, like I had to face all this stuff all at the same time. And I was sure that I could not do it without Ambien. Positive. It was terrified.
So, but you don't take the Ambien.
I don't know how to get out of the car without Scott realizing what I'm doing. And he's bound and determined to go to Starbucks because we haven't had caffeine for a month.
Ah,
That's what he's excited about. And he's talking to the driver and he's like, "Where is there a Starbucks? We've been dying for, right, hun? Like, we're dying." Not, he didn't call me hun then. Right, Laura? We're dying for Starbucks. And I remember him talking, but I didn't hear him. All I was trying to figure out was, okay, I can say I need to jump in and like maybe get something that he won't be interested in the drugstore, like tampons, right? Like,
right.
I got to go get some tampons. But he hadn't been in a drugstore for 30 days. I was sure that he would also want to go in and get something. And I just didn't know how I would get the pills in front of him. And the feeling I had when we drove past that drugstore and got on the highway going toward Phoenix was something I'd never experienced before. It was beyond regret. It was it was absolute grief. I was leaving the thing behind that I understood to be the only way I could face life, and I wasn't going to have it.
And then you get back. And at this point, are you like, well, I didn't pick it up at the drugstore, so I guess I'm gonna have to try to go. I mean, because at that point, you could have gone home, transferred it back to
Yeah,
LA, but you didn't.
I could have, but my divorce attorney had a whole list of things for me to do, and one of them was drug testing twice a week.
This
Um,
is the story I wanted to get to. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and she was smart. She was just like, no one's asking for this, but let's get ahead of it so that when we get to that point, if anyone says, well, we don't know if she's been sober, we have documentation that says yes, she has. In fact, she's been voluntarily drug testing for the last 3 months, and here is the proof. And I just didn't know how to beat a twice a week drug test. I thought about it, and the information available on Ambien was pretty scarce then. There wasn't that much information. There was information on beating other kinds of drug tests on the internet,
Hmm.
but not too much about Ambien. And I was more scared of coming up dirty and losing my kids than I was of going through a day shaky I wasn't in withdrawal anymore, but I kind of was for like 6 months. Like I still had night sweats for like 6 months. I still had brain zaps. I was very like my nervous system was so dysregulated for like 6 months.
Let me ask you this though. When you get drug tested, you could probably still drink, right? Or would it check for that too? Like it was your ex knew what you were going to rehab for, but did you feel like, oh, he's going to look for a reason to try to take my kids? Because he didn't even know you were an addict of any kind at that point until you told him.
I didn't think that, but my attorney did.
Okay.
She knew his attorney. And she's like, even if your ex doesn't want to, he's going to go for that. He's going to look through everything. He's going to make sure that he gets his client the best deal out of this, which might mean trashing you and your
So
reputation.
did your attorney say you also shouldn't drink? Because I'm
Yeah, I
assuming you
think that
probably
was
felt
why.
like although I do remember a scene in your book where you like drained all the stuff from your bar at
Yeah,
home.
I did. I finished most of the bar. Like there were a few things that I didn't like to drink, like gin. I never liked gin. But
Same.
most of it I had taken down and refilled with water to the point where it was too watery. So the alcohol wasn't all gone, but if he had poured himself a drink, he absolutely would have known. So I refilled it and stocked it so it was whole again. Um, but here's the thing, I didn't ever drink if I didn't have Ambien. I never like had a drink during like even when it was the worst, when I was completely out of Ambien, I never drank in between. I didn't like it. And it didn't do the same thing for me. So yeah, I probably could have drank, but I didn't want to.
So you went for these drug tests, and this is just a good story. Can you tell me about like you felt like this is so ridiculous. You're going into like it's not fancy.
It was not fancy at all. It was, in between like a Circus Liquors and a check cashing place. There were, just people hanging out outside who looked like they were unhoused. It was also a needle exchange. So it, I would like park my Range Rover in front where I could see it and then, try not to touch anything when I was inside. And the deal with the drug testing was this woman whose name was Veronica would have to walk back there with me and watch me pee into a cup. I thought I just had to pee there behind a closed stall door. But no, she had to watch me do this. And it was the first time I couldn't even do it, you
I
know.
get so pee shy.
Yes, pee shy for real.
Yeah.
It was humiliating. The second time I really hydrated so that I could produce something, but it was still really hard. And, we went on for a few weeks like that. And finally, we started talking about like the Real Housewives of Atlanta while I was peeing. And then we started talking about her kids while I was peeing. And then we got to know each other really well. And by the time I ended, we started in August, right when I got out of treatment. I ended in December because that's when the mediation was. And by the last visit with her, I had Christmas presents for her kids. She had a present for me. We hugged each other and we were both crying. Like it was this bond, this very unexpected bond with the most unexpected person. She was like all tatted up and like the tattooed eyeliner and like she was just somebody that I would have kind of rushed past if I saw her on the street and not looked at. And then to just to have this bond with her was really magical.
So you make it through, but it's only for a few months that you have to even do the drug testing.
It
And
was 3 months. Yeah.
then you have the mediation
Yeah.
and you're not in danger of now losing your kids.
Right. Well, yeah.
So
I mean,
what made you decide to stay with it?
over. Yeah, at that point I figured because yeah, I we were divorced and I obviously got to stay in my children's lives, but there was a clause in my divorce that basically if I was caught using or drinking again, he could take them and then we deal with it later, right?
Okay.
Which is smart. If I was loaded and he found that out, he should be able to take the kids and then deal with whatever I was dealing with. It felt harsh when it was spelled out for me at the time, like I was being punished. I understand it better now, and I have more compassion for the position he was in. Um, but so I kind of had this clause hanging over my head. And so I figured a year would be a good amount of time to stay sober. And that way he wouldn't even think about me getting loaded because I would have been good. I'm putting air quotes around that for a year. And that's what I did. And I didn't like it. I really hated it, actually. I hated meetings. I went to 12-step meetings. I came in the back. I sat in the back. I came in after the meeting started. I left before it was over. I talked to no one.
You talked to me.
I talked to you, but that was a year later.
Okay, almost a year later. Yeah,
Almost a
yeah,
year
you're
later.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But at first, those first few months, I was very much dark glasses on, arms folded. And then, I heard someone tell my story, which is what you hear in these things. And I, I, I guess I asked her to take me through these 12 steps, but in my recollection, she offered. I don't remember exactly what happened. But anyway, she did. And that everything, I was just kind of like waiting for the other, like until it was time for me to leave, basically. And I figured I would know when it was time for me to leave, but I just kept staying. And then eventually, like I meet you and I meet a few other people, like we have a few friends that I won't name that I met that really um, allowed me to find my place in this and feel comfortable, more comfortable at times than I felt in my world outside of this. And I started realizing that, being honest, being authentic, not just telling the truth, but like living truthfully was so much better for me than the way that I had been living before. And the reason I was able to live that way was because of what I was learning in this program. And so that, and my kids, really liked who I was. Not that they didn't like who I was before, but I felt like there was a deeper connection with them. Like I was much more present for them because I wasn't planning, I was trying to wait till they got to sleep before so I could get high. Or I was planning how much I was strategizing all the time prior to that. And I wasn't strategizing anymore. I was just with them. And I did all the same stuff. I joined the board of trustees. I helped with the galas. Like I did all the same stuff, but I was present for it. And I really liked that. I really liked how it made me. So I stayed.
I remember when I was new and then I had to lead a meeting and you came up to me afterwards. We've talked about this since, but and somebody had said something a little bit rude, and it was a person who says something who's kind of rude to everyone. And you came over to me and you were like, "Don't worry about that." Like you told my story. I
Uh,
really relate to you. And then it was like a newcomer meeting. And then you were the first person you asked me to help you celebrate your 1 year. So, and
yeah.
you were the first, I only had, I mean, I had a couple months, I guess, at the time or
Yeah.
less. If I'm May and you're
You
August.
had more. You
Anyway, the
were,
point,
yeah.
yeah, the point is I had a couple months of sobriety and it was so
Yeah.
exciting to me. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, what do you get somebody for their birthday? And then I think I got you like a card and like some candy. And I was very into it. I was so excited and like really honored to do it. But um,
That's so
we
cool.
always don't realize how much our story can like impact the next person, which is really like what this podcast is, because I think that regardless of how you do it and how whether you go to a 12-step program or whether you read a book about, I don't care how you do it. I think the thing that helps people is recognizing their feelings, their same feelings in somebody else's story.
Yeah. I
So I'm so happy that you shared with us. And now it's been all these years later, you're still with the guy
I
that
am.
you met in rehab, which is just so cute.
Yeah, it's
He's
weird.
the cutest, and you guys work together and you live together. And you're a podcaster. Are you still like what? Tell us where we can find you, what you're doing. You have a beautiful book,
Thank
which
you. Yeah, so the podcast is called The Only One in the Room, and it's Stash My Life in Hiding. Thank you for holding that up. Is that the hardcover? It
yeah,
is.
this is the
Yeah.
hardcover. Yeah,
Yay.
this is up for YouTube so they can see
Ah,
the book.
good, good. Um, yeah, The Only One in the Room is the podcast. Dash My Life in Hiding is the memoir. Um, the memoir came out in March of 2023. The paperback came out last year. The Audible, I don't know if you found this with your books. My audiobook is going crazy. Like it's doing really well. The hardcover and the paperback sales are far less than the audio.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's really nice to see. And I appreciate however you read it or listen to it, consume it. I appreciate it. And the podcast focuses on anybody who's ever felt alone in a room full of people, whether that's sobriety or infertility or divorce or someone with a disability, whatever that is that you might feel like you're alone. We have those stories on the podcast. And yeah, and I'm my name everywhere. My website is at Laura, no, my website is lauracathcartrobbins.com. And on Instagram, I'm at Laura Cathcart Robbins. I'm on other platforms, but not really. I don't really check Facebook or X, but I'm on them. So, you can find me there. But if you want to engage with me, check out Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Laura Cathcart Robbins, everybody. Thank you again. Thank you for sharing your beautiful story. And I adore you.
Same.
And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.